what I want to talk today about is ChatOps, the technology and philosophy of it. My most recent time, as we said, was spent 2 years at GitHub, where they use this pretty much all day, every day. And hopefully by the end of this talk, if you weren't convinced by Dan, I hope to convince you that once you start working this way, you'll never want to work another way again. I think that's how powerful ChatOps is to a daily practice, to your organization growth, and even just fun, right? Like bringing back fun into your day-to-day operations. Now, with every presentation I give, I like to start with stories, just because it gets your brain moving and whatnot. So, ask a question. First of all, who is using ChatOps? Is everybody using ChatOps? Okay, 1, 2, good. Okay, all right. If this has happened to you before, chuckle internally. Let's say your system breaks. Maybe that's happened to you before. And then out of nowhere comes your boss and says, we need to go to this war room. Maybe that's a virtual war room on a conference call. Maybe it's an actual physical room. But now you've collected tons of people. You're all in this room trying to fix this problem. And you're working on it, and out of nowhere comes this VP and says, hey, what's the status? What's going on? How's it going? And everybody has to stop, I/O block, to explain to the VP what's going on, what's the status, and then we can get back to fixing it again. ChatOps helps with this. Maybe you're developing something. You have this really cool application you're pushing out for your company, doesn't matter, hopefully your company. And you go to deploy it, and then somebody says, well, wait a second, you need to fill out some change control requests. All right, well, so you go through that exercise, you fill out the change control requests, then you submit it, and then they say, no, let's go have some change control meetings, and we'll talk with the project managers, and we'll get it lumped in with this next release that's going out to all the systems all the time. Right? We do these giant releases, and you need to be in this train of sorts. So you go through this exercise, fine, I'm going to release this, my feature is awesome. You go through this exercise, and then it goes to the hidden wall of ops. You hand it off to them. You don't know what happens. And they come back to you and they say, it didn't work. All that effort, all that time, and nothing, right? That long feedback loop to get there. There were meetings and emails and discussions and guys with bullhorns yelling at you all day long. ChatOps helps with this. What if you're brand new to a company? You have no idea where to start. You're sitting in the corner, lonely, trying to figure out what to do. ChatOps helps with this. And the last one, maybe you're just having a horrible, horrible day for whatever reason, because, we work with computers. And you just need a cute kitten. ChatOps helps with this too. Now, why this is important is ChatOps is just as much a cultural change to your organization as it is a technology, right? I can't say Hubot is ChatOps or insert some tool is ChatOps. ChatOps is bringing in the work that you're already doing in line with the context of the conversations you're already having. Right? Just let that sink in a little bit. Already doing the things you're already doing, bringing them into the context of the conversations you're already having. Today, that's emails or threads or whatnot, and you've kind of got to cross-reference these things and figure out what's going on, and maybe somebody's off in a corner doing something, and out of nowhere, this new feature's released that you've just spent 2 weeks working on because the communication didn't happen. ChatOps helps with the communication structures, helps bring in the technology into these conversations, and that's the real power, and that's what I want to talk about today. So hi, I'm James Fryman. I currently work at a company called Stackstorm, brand new company. I'm very excited to join them. This is not going to be a big sales thing. In a nutshell, what we do is we're solving this problem, right? Today, when I used to give these talks, I used to say, let's do ChatOps, and by the end of the conversation, everybody's on board, wants to do it. And you say, where do you start? Well, Stackstorm. That's what we're trying to solve. So if you want to talk about that, I'll kind of highlight it a little bit at certain small points, but again, I'll kind of keep focused on what ChatOps is. And if you're interested in this, come talk to me after the end. So again, what's it all about? GitHub coined this term in 2008, I would say, and it grew out of this concept of GitHub as a company is a distributed company. And not everybody is in the same room at the same time, and they needed to get work done. Basically, they needed to get a deploy done, and they wanted to make sure that everybody who needed to do that deploy was aware of it, at whatever time that they woke up and whatever time zone that they were. And early on, the company was distributed globally. We didn't just start here in San Francisco, right? After the first 5, they were everywhere. And the common tools that kind of play in this space today are bots, right? And they sit on top of your chat room. Dan did a really good job of kind of explaining the bootstrap of this, right? But if you have a chat room, you get a bot. And there's a couple to play with today. HughBot being the kind of grandfather of all of this. There's 2 new players in this space that are really trying to, destroy CoffeeScript. I don't know if you're a CoffeeScript fan. I know I am not. But if you're glutton for pain, HughBot is amazing. But Lita is in Ruby and is in Python. So pick your poison, but start get going with it. And then at the bottom, I'm going to highlight that, hey, we do that too. So I'll come back to that. But why? That slide is horrible here. But why? Why do I want ChatOps? The concept is, what is a shared console? Right? Have you ever thought about this? What is a shared console? Shared command line? Well, it's actually shared context. Right? So now everybody's executing these commands all over the place. They're happening in line, and everybody sees them, and everybody gets to see and collaborate around things that happen. This is super amazing in the incident management space, specifically, right? It's really great all over places, and I'll talk about where it's great, but specifically in the incident management space, as soon as I have a problem, the first thing I'm going to go do is start troubleshooting that. Maybe I'm going to go query some logs, and I'm going to do that within ChatOps, and those logs drop into the chat room. Maybe I'm going to go query some graphs out of my Graphite server or from Librado or whatever time series database I happen to be using. And I pull those into the chat room. Well, what that ends up doing is spurring the conversation and getting everybody else's imaginations going. This graph you pulled up, it's close. I see something there. I'm going to go query a graph. And now all of a sudden, everybody's just querying these things all around each other. And instead of that conversation happening in flurry on a conference call, where everybody's trying to convey server 02N34, right? That's just annoying. You got to get to the NATO alphabet. You're trying to talk over each other. It just doesn't happen. And suddenly, once you're in the async world, and you have this shared context, now everybody's collaborating. And mean time to restore drops dramatically. Huge. This is an example of one of the commands that we had at GitHub, where you could query pretty much any data and drop it into a chat room. Super powerful. Right? Some of these were pre-saved commands. Some of them were I'm just going to send raw queries to Graphite. Right? Super awesome, super amazing. But it also enables team scaling. One of the things about ChatOps that Dan touched on is really powerful is not everybody in your company is great at everything. And if you have that person in your company that is great at everything, just keep throwing money at them. Right? But not everybody is awesome like that. Right? These magical unicorns, frankly, they don't exist. But what ChatOps allows you to do is get super hyper specialized with people in your organization. Right? Maybe you get somebody who's amazing at networking, and you know bupkiss about Linux. Right? You get somebody who's amazing at SQL, and you know bupkiss about networking. But now these guys start developing the interfaces of their commonly known tasks and drop them into ChatOps. And what that does is it makes me more powerful. It makes you more powerful. And everybody gets the shared knowledge of that person now available to them right then. Need to roll over and fail over a MySQL cluster? I could do that. It'd be really scary, and I would have a DBA on the phone with me. But with ChatOps, it's a command. It's safe. And it's safe in the sense that you can create nice boundaries. I like to bowl with the guards up, right? So you always hit the pins. Right? ChatOps allows you to do that, where you're allowed to give really complex and scary commands to everybody and write the bounds around them about what is safe and what is not safe to do. Right? You want to go deploy 100,000 servers? Go for it. You want to delete production data? Go for it. Maybe put in a magic word or something. But you can do these things because now once they're ChatOpsed, they've been blessed by somebody who is the subject matter expert. They've been dropped in and tested, and now you have access to do these things. And if it's not within the bounds of what the subject matter expert has said you can do, you can't do it. And that's what makes it awesome, because you can't hurt anything most of the time. So let's talk a little bit about the design of ChatOps. So maybe you're going down this road, or you're interested in going down this road, and you want to understand, how do I build and what kind of things do I need to think about when I'm building a ChatOps infrastructure? First of which is, you have to keep it small. Because the one thing that is super important here is the cultural change that's associated with this. The minute you talk to somebody who is not in operations or is not in IT, and you go to your VP and say, look, I want to put that we can deploy 100,000 servers into a chat room. They're going to go, whoa, 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 what is that? Right? There's a huge fear about like doing really complex automations today. It's just, let's just call it what it is. It exists, right? Now what you're able to do with this is make small cultural changes and adapt your company to understanding that, hey, we're going to do this ChatOps thing. And that usually manifests itself in passive actions. I need to go query some information about my infrastructure. I need to go query some information about my application. So I'm going to go do these passive things. You're not going to hurt anything. There's no chance in heck that those things will die. You're just bringing the context into the conversation. Maybe you automate something that you get asked to do 100,000 times. They exist, right? Maybe you need to bounce this port because there's a problem with it. Maybe you need to deploy a server. I've used that example, right? Find the low-hanging fruit and pick it off and then drop it into chat. I have a story about that later. The second thing is you want to describe the service. So one of the benefits of being at GitHub and kind of walking down this voyage is we have 6 years, they have 6 years of ChatOps history behind them. You can kind of see the evolution about how it happened. And it started out with very English kind of speaking commands. Go get me this thing, please, Hubot. Go do this thing for me, you bad bot. Whatever, right? And it kind of became difficult because those things became ingrained to the conversations as opposed to the service that it's providing, right? And why that's important is because if I have a CI service as opposed to a Jenkins service, if I need to change the underpinnings, I'm really not messing up anybody's workflow, right? They continue to use this amazing ChatOps that you provided to them, and you get to go do maintenance on the back end. Swap out an entire stack if you want to. As long as the interface stays the same and the behavior returns the same, you win. Same thing with like graphs, right? Don't tie it to graphite, tie it to a graph. Because Conway's law dictates the communication structures of your software. It's just kind of a fact, right? As we communicate to people, we want to be able to say, this is the structure of how I want to communicate. This is important because you want to try to encourage people to use these tools. There's a natural language which your company uses in every given day. We talk about, one company I used to be, they loved acronyms. Oh, we're going to deploy the TSB to the ESN, and then we're going to go catch an IPMI. Okay, great, right? Capturing that knowledge about your organization into how you design these things helps adoption. Because they're already talking about these things. Again, right, we're already having these conversations. You're already typing these things into chat. Why don't just, as soon as you say something, the bot do something about it? Wouldn't it be amazing if suddenly a conversation you were already happening and just say, hey, what happened to this server over here? And out of nowhere, Hubot drops in and goes, oh, it's doing this. You go, whoa! Because you're now modeling it after the communication structures that you're already having. Use standard interfaces. This is kind of a pattern that I think has the most flexibility, where you have your action and your series of tree hierarchies of what action you need to have within a tool, and then parameters associated with it. Why this is important is because if you kind of mix and match, your users are going to get confused about the interfaces which with they communicate. If I have one command that says, graph me this thing by this, and I have another command where I'm sending key value pairs, well, now there's a barrier there, right? They've got to figure out, what is this command before I use it? And certainly that's an easily overcome barrier, but the point is you want to reduce friction by introducing ChatOps, not introduce friction. So kind of pick a design that works for you and go with it. Provision a server with the destination of my VMware cluster in this data center. I like the key value pair specifically because once it drops into logs, it's super easy to search on. And I know us operations guys hate this, but docs come first, right? The last thing I do is documentation, unless it's in ChatOps. Because now people are going to query that bot for how to work it. Your bot should be intelligent enough to answer the question of how to use it, as opposed to like, oh, you got to go read some code, right? Because it's naturally you want to ask the bot questions as if it is a person. How do I do this? You do it like this. How do I use the provision command? You do this. How do I use the graphing command? You use this. And it's got to come first, because if they ask how to use the tool, the bot needs to know how to tell you. And give it character. Our Hubot was a jerk. Absolute jerk. That guy would yell at you, he'd scream at you, he'd curse you out randomly 10% of the time, especially if you entered the wrong commands. But that was cool, because what it did is it brought the flavor, and you didn't know if Hubot was going to insult you or not at that moment. And that makes it fun, right? I really enjoy what I do. I don't know if you guys do. I hope you do, right? But make it more fun. Somebody comes in and there's a bot giving them flack. Have them fight back with it. Like, banter with the bot. But pick a flavor, whatever flavor works for your company. It could be a nice bot, it could be a sad bot. I've seen an Eeyore bot before. Horrible, horrible bot. But he had character, and he still did the same things as ever. And log everything. And this is less of a problem today than it was, say, a couple years ago, because if you're using a HipChat or a Slack and you're paying them, it comes for free, right? So let's talk about some real-world examples about where I've actually seen this happen. So far, we kind of talked about a little bit hypothetical. And I have a couple examples I'd like to talk about. The first of which is a colleague of mine by the name of James White. And kind of like the DevOps thing, you know, there was DevOps before there was DevOps. There was ChatOps before there was ChatOps, right? You give a bot some commands and it does something. Well, he's in the kind of lazy admin school of the world, and people would come to him and ask him status for printers. So they did this kind of card printing service where they shipped out these boxes to different banks. And they could print your debit card or credit card on the spot. Kind of cool. Well, CSRs would need to come in and say, what's the status of this printer? Does it have all the cards does it have? Does it have enough ink? Has it registered recently? And they would come in and they'd ask my friend, hey, what's the status of this? What's the status of this? What's the status of this? Well, after about a day, he got tired of this. So he wrote a command and modeled it after every type of question that they asked him. Right? They probably asked the same question, but 6 or 7 ways. And they modeled what that looked like. And the next time they came in here, suddenly the bot started answering for them. And within 2 weeks, he didn't have to answer any questions, because they would just drop in the chat room, ask the questions, and move on. Now, this is one really important that I like to highlight, because they're not technical people doing this. They're kind of business people doing this. And that's another kind of core tenet of DevOps and ChatOps and why it's important. Is because our job is to try to enable businesses, right? We're trying to reduce the friction. And by creating ChatOps, we're giving them back the power to do these really complex things. That's super powerful. That's super awesome. Kind of on the more technical side, this is my favorite one. At GitHub, we had some problems for a little bit. I don't know if you remember, about 2 years ago, we were down sometimes. Because DDoS attackers are horrible, right? We hate those guys. And we built some ChatOps around this, and over the course of about 6 months, we built a pretty good sizable operations within ChatOps to manage stuff like networks and our scrubbing data. Well, he was on his way to a conference to talk about ChatOps, and on the way he gets a page. And this page says, hey, you're getting DDoS. He said, okay, no problem. Pulls out his phone, types in one command, and then puts his phone down. And that one command did several things. Contacted the incident controller, let them know what was going on. Created an issue for them to track this after the fact. Started logging all of these things in an event log so they could review the incident after the fact. Called up our service provider to change our BGP routes to send traffic to them. All of this with one command on his phone. If that's not power, I don't know what is, truthfully. That's amazing. Now, that's kind of, you hear that and you're like, I wouldn't go that far down the road. But in reality is you start small. And these small little actions that you create start to compound upon each other. And suddenly you can start to create and chain these things together to do really complex things. All of these, that big command was comprised of very small actions. Create an issue on GitHub. Send a command to the network router to check status. Send a BGP command to the network to do this thing. All these small commands are basically piped together in order to do the really big complex thing. The third of which is actually from my colleague Eric over here. He told me this when we were in Berlin recently. they have ChatOps implemented at their organization, and they have a locking mechanism where at the end of each month, they kind of lock their production so they can do end-of-month stuff. And the finance guys will drop into a chat room and say, hey, lock the system. And they go, okay, lock it, lock it, lock it. And this was working really well until one day the developers or the operations guys, they probably went out for a beer. And they still needed to lock the system. And they went, hold on a second, can I do that? And they did, and they typed in the command. And now they don't even have to do that with them. It's just done. It's a tool now that they've given back to the organization in order to get their job done faster and more efficient. This is power. This is power. So kind of digging into this, where do we go, right? Going a little bit further with this. It's not just ops, kind of been harping on this, right? The tools that you create can and should be just as important for the organization. Can they go query their BI cubes from ChatOps? Well, I hope so, right? That'd be kind of neat. Can they go do analytics data and bring it into the context of the marketing conversation? Well, that'd be kind of neat, right? Can you get daily reports about how much money we're making? Well, that'd be kind of neat. And these aren't hypothetical. We did this every day, right? Every day. Because DevOps is a business problem. It's not a technology problem. Fundamentally, it is a business problem. ChatOps is not a technology. It is a methodology, just like DevOps, right? You pick your tool, you go with some core competencies, and you let it go. And what's really cool about this is over time, people start to develop confidence in this. And this is how you start to get over the automation hump. What I'm really excited about is crossing that bridge. There's an end state that I think about every day. And that end state is where I don't even have to touch the computers anymore. They just fix themselves, right? That is the mecca. And that's what we're going toward. But because of the cultural shift, you have to do that in piecemeal. So as you're building your ChatOps and as they're kind of getting used to the fact that a bot's doing something, they're going to execute this thing tens of times, hundreds of times. And every time it's going to return the same thing or do a known quantity. And if it doesn't, you go fix it really quick and you kind of move on with life. And that develops the confidence. And then it's very easy to make the next step of, let's do this cooler thing. Let's do this bigger thing. Let's let the bot just fix it. Because it turns out it's humans talking to each other and the bot talking to each other and in a chat room is just a different kind of service bus. It's just slower. But once you give it back to the bot, it accelerates. And ultimately, you end up with event-driven infrastructure. And that's the mecca. But unfortunately, I don't have time for that. So we'll talk about that next time. So if you have questions about this, I love talking about this. Please ping me at jfryman. Also hit me up at james@stackstorm.com. And then I kind of did mention this. This is a problem that Stackstorm wants to solve. You cannot just implement ChatOps today. Right? You kind of have to go figure out a bot, you have to go pick a tool, you have to go start building this library. What Stackstorm does, just real quick, is we help facilitate this. We plug into your chat room, we start creating actions for you, we handle the logging, we handle the auditing. And then once you start building that trust within your company, we take those events and we kick off other events. True event-driven infrastructure. So if you're interested in this, come find us on our IRC channel. We have documents about this, and we also have open sourced our tool. Go download it, try it out. So thank you very much, I appreciate it.